Hey everyone, welcome to the Geek Rant. Today I have a special guest. You know him best as the author of many Star Wars visual guides, including The Essential Guide to Warfare and The Essential Atlas. But most recently, he wrote the latest Star Wars novel, Luke Skywalker, The Weapon of a Jedi. Viewers, I present to you Jason Fry.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Very good. Thank you for being on, by the way, and great job on Weapon of a Jedi.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really glad you liked it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was definitely my favorite of the Force Awakens journey so far. But yeah, I really want to get into this book. Where did you get the idea from it initially? Like, what got you into it?
Well, the initial basic story came from Lucasfilm before I got there. Lucasfilm and Disney had the basics outlined already, which were that Luke would be called to a strange planet by the Force. He'd investigate ruins for Jedi lore, but the fun of it was then filling in all the blanks, and particularly thinking about Luke and his Force training would look like, considering that in this case, he's really on his own. He doesn't have a teacher. He has to figure out by himself.
What was it like working with the story group? Were there like certain parameters or anything like that within the scope of the story?
It's every project is different. On some projects, you'll inherit a plot, some characters, where the basics are already filled in, like this one. In other cases, the Servants of the Empire series, most of the time, for instance, there really won't be anything said, and the story will be all yours. But whoever you're working with at Lucasfilm or Disney, there really aren't that many restrictions beyond kind of common sense ones about what you're going to do with characters or a plot. It's really all about storytelling and kind of making sure that you tell the story that everyone has in mind as fully and as well and as engagingly as possible. And they're really there for that. It's not really so much continuity police or anything like that. The one thing that's been interesting in this kind of new era of storytelling is there's more potential connections that get raised. What I mean by that is that with notes, I now more than I used to will get notes that say hey, if you raised X or Y or Z, that could be interesting. And as a writer, that's good advice. But as a fan, I find that really interesting. This is an era where, a whole lot of groundwork is being laid for stories yet to be told. And I, in most cases, don't necessarily know what those are. So it's kind of fun to be able to play a little role in those and then get to see them unfold as a fan. So that's really exciting. I don't know completely what it will mean, but that's a fun thing to be a part of.
It definitely is fun, especially the premise of this novel is based around C-3PO from The Force Awakens speaking to a Resistance pilot, and just having that being the groundwork, the foundation of the story in and of itself is actually pretty interesting. Yeah,
that was an interesting challenge, both as a writer and frankly as a fan. What we're doing with these in Journey of the Force Awakens, we've been calling them puzzle pieces. It's, there's definitely, people have probably heard there's a new movie coming out, and, these books are definitely intended in part to increase the excitement about that by giving readers some things to ponder before December 18th. So that's definitely there, but, a couple things I just want to make clear to people who are maybe new to this is, there aren't any spoilers in there. For instance, the kind of frame story, if you will, around Weapon of a Jedi, or around Moving Target, or anything else, take place in the same time period as The Force Awakens, but they don't spoil anything in the movie itself. So people can read these and not worry about that. But it was kind of a dual mission. One was, obviously selecting with the help of Lucasfilm and Disney what those puzzle pieces were going to be and how they were integrated into the frame stories and into the stories themselves. But, that was always secondary to just telling a really good story, which I was pretty happy about that, because it meant taking on an interesting challenge, but one that I felt had been emphasized correctly. I mean, the story, like I said in my previous answer, I mean, the story is always got to be job one, and job two, job three, job four, etc. Without that, the rest of whatever you're trying to accomplish in a book generally won't work. So, that was fun, but but Lucas and Disney were a huge help in all that.
Yeah, speaking of story, I think that is the strongest point of this novel. I really think you did a really, really good job capturing the voice of Luke. Did you have anything in mind for Luke? Like, how did you get into that character? Because it's a very special character to Star Wars fans. I mean, he is the main character of the original trilogy, and he has the most compelling arc of any of the main trio. How did you get into Luke Skywalker?
It wasn't easy for a couple of reasons. One is that, the most basic one that I have to admit is I'm really a Han guy by temperament. I would have been the worst rebel ever, because when Han says to Luke, why don't you come with me if we could use you, I was like, yeah, go do that. I was zooming around on a pirate ship. It sounded just much more fun to me than being a rebel soldier or trying to figure out the Force. So by temperament, I was a Han guy, and so that was an immediate challenge. But part of that is that Luke is actually a kind of elusive character. He's hard to get just right, and there was a fair amount of pressure there, particularly for a Han guy. And the way I approached that was two ways. One was to go back and watch the classic trilogy for what has to be like the 300th time. And what I was doing this time, though, is I was really kind of closely studying Mark Hamill. Not just what he said and what he did, but also how he reacted to other characters. Particularly, when characters are disagreeing with him or trying to push him to do something. That was the one way I tried to kind of unlock the character in a way I felt I had to. It was also a lot of fun. It gave me this huge appreciation for Mark Hamill and the things he does, particularly in Empire, for which he doesn't get nearly enough credit as an actor. So that was step one, and that helped. And the other thing actually was a comment on the Force.net lit boards.
Wait a minute.
Really helped me.
You're on the Force.net?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Do you get on the Jedi Council forums as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No,
my goodness, we run in the same group. I usually do the lightsaber videos over there, the 3D section.
Cool.
Well, we'll talk about that more, but let's continue with Luke. That's awesome, though.
Yeah. No, you can find me on Lit anywhere. It's kind of my own Reddit AMA. People ask why I don't do one. I'm like, I do one every day. Just ask me a question. There was a poster there. Jedi Princess was a name. I'm very grateful to her or him. It's just a screen name. Who knows? Who posted a really interesting discussion of Luke. And the thing she pointed out was that Luke is gentle. He's just not your typical action hero. And I thought about that and was like, yeah, that's exactly it. And think of two things. One, just think about the classic trilogy. In A New Hope, what Luke has to learn is he has to learn to let go. He has to learn to let go and let the Force guide the proton torpedo into the Death Star. That's how he wins. In Return of the Jedi, he beats Darth Vader in a saber duel, but that's actually not a victory. It's a victory for the Emperor. It's what the Emperor has tried to engineer. He actually wins there by throwing away the saber and by appealing to his father and awakening, Anakin's love for the son that he thought he'd lost. And the time we really see Luke as more of a conventional action hero who, ignores his teachers who don't know anything and goes off to take action is in Empire, and it's a disaster. He gets his hand cut off. He winds up saddled with this terrible secret he's not ready for, and the friends he goes to rescue wind up having to go back and rescue him. So that was interesting, and that idea of letting go, of figuring out how to work with the Force was something that really helped me unlock what I wanted to do in Weapon of a Jedi. That goes right back to Hamill though and his performance. There's a story I really love, the scene where Luke and 3PO have tracked down R2-D2 and 3PO's like, "You're lucky he doesn't blast you in a million pieces right here," and Hal goes, "No, it's all right." There's a story in the filming of that in Tunisia. Mark Hamill did it like he was all full of storm and thunder at R2, and George Lucas said, "Cut." And he was like, "It's not a big deal. Just, no, take it easy." And Hamill was like, "Oh, come on." And so he did a take just as ridiculously understated as he could, thinking that Lucas would be like, "Oh, I get it. This doesn't work." And Lucas was like, "Perfect." And Hamill after that was like, "I got the character." It's again, he's gentle in a way that's really interesting for an action hero. So yeah, put those two things together, and those really help me become what I now say is, I'm still a Han guy, but now I like to think I'm a member of Team Luke. Really helped me appreciate the character in ways that I hadn't before.
You can't see my head right now, but that entire time while you were speaking, I was nodding my head in like utter agreement, and it gives me such joy that I know that the author of this novel that I really enjoyed really, really got Luke Skywalker, and all those steps you took to understand Luke was perfect. Like, that's exactly what Luke is. And I would have never guessed that you were a Han guy, like from reading the book, because that, like, this is possibly the best version of Luke that I've read, possibly, since like the original trilogy novelizations and, some of the EU stuff. But Luke is not just an action star. It's easy for someone to just mention like Tosche Station and power converters and say, "Oh, hey, look, I know who Luke is. He's this guy who says these lines." But no, you understand Luke from like a very deeper level, because he is this very much. I'm glad that Jedi Princess person said that. Like, yeah, he's very much a gentle person, and when he goes against that, that's when things go wrong for him. And I love that you mentioned the part at the end of Return of the Jedi where he throws his lightsaber away, which is, basically what a Jedi is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about peace and not about, I can beat you with my lightsaber, that kind of thing. So that's awesome. I'm glad that you did such a great job with that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad you liked it. No, thank you for that. But it was a lot of work. At the starting point, I really didn't feel like I got the character, and so I really had to work for that. But there's work and there's work. So, my work was watching Star Wars and getting to think about it a lot, which was a pretty cool job to do. It was a lot of fun getting there.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great that fans get to be a part of the lore, especially now. Actually, I had a question about that. Back to continuity. There's a lot of material that the story group is working within this timeline. This takes place, I believe, a few weeks after A New Hope, but there's also another story, Heir to the Jedi, which takes place in a certain timeline, and the new Star Wars Marvel comics, which also take place in that timeline. I guess that's what my first question was kind of alluding to. There wasn't really any discussion about those other properties, were there?
No, which was interesting for me, because a lot of my previous work has been very continuity heavy. What I would call nonfiction fiction, whether it's the Guide to Warfare or the Atlas, etc. So it was honestly, as a guy who really likes storytelling, it was honestly a pleasure not to have to worry about that. They gave me my story. They were like, "Here's the story," and we worked out the rest of it. And I really left fitting where it goes in the new canon up to Lucasfilm. I really trusted them to guide that. One thing about publishing is it takes so much longer than we think. Weapon of a Jedi was written last September. On planes zooming around the world, but that's another story. So it was a full year ago. So I didn't have access to the Marvels; those stories were still being developed, and I hadn't read Heir. I think I read Heir to the Jedi after I'd done my work on the Luke book. But like I say, as a guy who's done a lot of continuity work, I certainly enjoy that, but. It was honestly really freeing to just be able to write a story and trust the good folks at Lucasfilm and Disney to make it work. People, but it's funny. People who expect me to be able to answer continuity questions get somewhere between disappointed and annoyed with me that I don't know exactly where it fits. The theory I've read out there is that if you look at Luke's telekinetic abilities, and then how to say this without being a spoiler, if you look at a certain issue he has to deal with during his duel, how he deals with it in Weapon of the Jedi and how he deals with it later, the theory out there is that Weapons of the Jedi fits pretty neatly between Heir to the Jedi and the Marvels. I hope that's so. If it is and it does fit nicely, then the credit should go to Lucasfilm and Disney, not to me.
And that's kind of the construct of what they have. I mean, they do have this, very secret project that is The Force Awakens, so they can only give you guys so much. It's kind of like on a need-to-know basis, and they're working it out pretty well so far. But yes, I have some fan questions for you. I actually put on my Facebook. I said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing Jason Fry. Anybody got any questions? Are you okay answering some of those right now?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, cool. So we got this first one from Ricardo Elliott. He asked, ask him for any advice to writers who hope to one day pen a canon Star Wars story. Oh, and also, he asked to know if you are familiar with any of the lightsaber duels, the ones I was referring to beforehand.
Which lightsaber duels?
Sorry, the fan-made ones.
No, I've got to check those out, though. That sounds pretty awesome. Advice for a writer? Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm glad Ricardo asked that. It's one I get a lot. I will say in advance that people often don't like the answer, though. The weird thing about me is that, yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I always have been. I mean, I'm sitting in my study now, which has, literally every Legends work that was ever created. I mean, goodness, I have like the UK choose your own adventure stories that were only published over there, because I'm a lunatic about that stuff and really loved it. So yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but that was really a coincidence. In getting to write Star Wars. As an editor, which I've been myself, you're not looking for someone who's a big fan. That's a great thing to get if you can get it, but it's not what you're looking for. What you're really looking for is a professional writer, someone who has demonstrated they can write, has demonstrated they'll hit deadlines, they'll be a team player, etc. That's the most important thing in any project. And, fandom, if you get it, is terrific, but it's very much secondary to that. So, I was just incredibly lucky to, have some breaks fall my way and get a chance to do this. And I think if you, in some alternate universe rewound the tape, I think you could run it 100 times and I wouldn't be lucky that same way again. So, the best thing I can tell people who want to write Star Wars is, first of all, you need to revise that sentence. Make your goal, I want to write, and leave the Star Wars part out. And then, go get a track record of being a professional writer, whether it's writing for a newspaper. I mean, that's honestly how I came up. I spent more than a decade as a professional journalist before letting my Star Wars hobby become something I actually got paid for. Or whether it's, creating your own space fantasy universe or whatever it is, go do it that way. And, if you do that long enough and get a track record, then maybe possibly, things will break your way and then writing for Star Wars becomes possible. But if you think about it as the goal, you're most likely going to wind up disappointed. And, it bums me out when I think that that's the only path people see, because it's just a very hard one to follow. But the great thing, though, if that sounds like depressing advice, I'd say the great thing is if you really want to write, you're going to love writing pretty much no matter what you do, and it can be its own reward. So, to me, that should be the goal. Go out, write whatever you can to get the experience to build the track record you need. And, if it's the career for you, you'll be happy writing, and then just follow that and create your own stuff. And, with a little luck, yeah, maybe someday Star Wars. But really, really enjoy the writing for itself above all else, because that will help you even if the rest doesn't develop.
As a follow-up, how did you specifically get into Star Wars? How did that land in your lap initially?
Yeah, I was a professional writer. I was a newspaper intern in college in Fresno, New Orleans. I worked for an environmental publisher specializing in indoor air quality, of all things, in Washington, D.C. Yeah, really. When I got right out of college. From there, I spent more than a decade working for the Wall Street Journal on the web side of the house. I run For 10 years, I've co-written a crazy baseball blog about the Mets. I mean, I write all the time. What happened was the first Star Wars fan community I ever found was back on the old America Online boards in the early 90s. And I got to know Dan Wallace through that. And Dan and I had this shared interest in Star Wars geography, and we used to dork out about that, which eventually, years later, led to the Essential Atlas. Like, Dan and I just bugged Del Rey about this crazy idea we had for a book until they, proposed it just to make us go away, and then it actually happened. But through that fan community, but again, more importantly, through the professional track record I had. I was offered to try out as the books columnist for the Star Wars Insider, and my first assignment was Vector Prime, which was top secret at the time because nobody knew what was going to happen in that book. And talking to Bob Salvador, I did that job for I think like 10 years, and just slowly worked my way up. Did some Star Wars gamer stuff. And eventually, we're doing a visual guide for the Clone Wars. Would you like to take that on? And so that was my first Star Wars title. And then the Essential Atlas came after that. And then, I've now kind of moved from that kind of guidebook material into fiction. Right now primarily for young adults, but also adult short stories, etc. So it's been a somewhat odd path, but one that's been enjoyable.
It's interesting what you said before. Going back to what you said, J.J. Abrams and also John Jackson Miller, the gentleman who made A New Dawn, have had similar musings about not just writing novels, but doing your craft in general. Like J.J. has always said that him being a fan of Star Wars is only secondary. Him being a good director is what's most important. Him being able to tell a story is most important. Same with John. He said that he had to build up a prose career before he could even, present himself to write a novel for Star Wars or any novel in general. And there's work behind it. You have to, like you were saying, you have to write beforehand. And I think that's very interesting that you and these other artists have that same mentality, and it's very true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am a huge fan, and I've written things where those emphases have gotten reversed. I've written some stuff, cut some of it out of Warfare. I've written some stuff that was really kind of fan first and continuity first and story second, and it just didn't work. The storytelling has always got to come first. It just really, really doesn't work the other way. But as JJ said, and JJM too, the great thing is if you really like writing, if you really like telling stories, if you like being a comics artist, and whatever your jam is, you're gonna love doing that, and that's its own reward. And then don't worry about whatever franchise you always dreamed of writing for. That's not the way to do it. If that works out, it's great. But this writing, the storytelling has to be its own reward. It's really the only way to stay sane in this business.
I'm very sure. I have one more question from a fan from Facebook. His name is Eric Dilling. The reason he's going to ask this question, by the way, is because my channel is very lightsaber oriented. So
okay.
That's going to make just to preface this question. He says, I would like his input on lightsaber forms, if there is any rules placed on writers when they want to include them, and why they sometimes don't. I love the details that in the books I've read. A Jedi is a Form 6 master. It really helps me get into the fight. So yes, that is very true. Some books, you'll have like James Luceno, for instance. He gets very detailed into lightsaber forms, while in some, like you kind of alluded to it in your novel, you do speak of Luke using the zones, which I believe is the first form of lightsaber combat, that preface. Is that something that you are into, or something you just didn't really want to mention?
It's an interesting question. No, thanks to Eric for asking it. What I did there, though, is I went back. I mean, yeah, I know about all the various lightsaber disciplines, etc. That really got introduced in the prequel era. when we saw a lot more lightsaber wielders. For Weapon of a Jedi, I really wanted to go back to think about it this way. The starting point for this was, how much training did Luke get from Ben Kenobi? I mean, we see the scene on the Death Star. We see the training on the Millennium Falcon. We hear some conversations. We know there's more than that, but there can't be more than a couple of days at most. So that was my starting point, thinking, what could Ben have taught him? And from there, what I really leaned on was a bit of Star Wars lore that has been, I think, kind of unjustly forgotten, which is the old radio dramas. Pardon me. The stuff that Luke recalls Ben telling him in Weapon of a Jedi is really taken from the radio dramas about, first defensive form, etc., that the remotes then test him on. That comes right out of the radio dramas and an extended version of the Millennium Falcon training scene. To be honest, the various, I can't even name them all. Jark, Kai, and Pad and stuff like that.
You got them though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I say I can't name them all, and then I probably could. I was honestly never sure how well they worked. I think it gets perilous the more you take the reader into jargon and terminology, particularly when it sounds really kind of spacey to the ear. I think you lose more readers than you gain with that, frankly. But the approach I took was, if that stuff is what appeals to you, it's certainly nothing in Weapon of a Jedi invalidates that at all. It's just Luke thinking about it a different way, as again, a very, very basic student who's still just trying to work on his connection to the Force and let everything flow from there. But yeah, it really came from the radio dramas. But all that, all your vape pad and the rest of that stuff is still out there if you want it, and hopefully what Luke does and what Luke learns fits into it nicely. At least I hope so.
Yeah, it actually does. Like, it's never actually mentioned, but Form 1 is essentially what you described in the novel.
Yeah, well, actually that's testament to the hard work and responsibility of creators other than me, because I'm sure they went back to the radio drama just like I did, and built from there. So that's honestly a really neat thing about Star Wars. Partially, it's a testament to Lucasfilm. We all kind of fret over continuity oopsies. I do it too. But for the most part, Star Wars is pretty remarkable for how relatively few there are. But it's also a testament to Star Wars creators really caring and doing the work all the way back when they were thinking up lightsaber forms. I'm sure they, whether it was David West Reynolds or whoever, I'm sure they dug up the radio dramas and made it work, which is testament to just how much people love this saga.
Getting into the last question, which is going to be kind of spoiler, I guess. So anybody who doesn't want to know anything about the book, I would suggest skipping over this portion. There is a mention of Luke returning to Deveron. Is that one of the tidbits to Force Awakens? Could we see Deveron in The Force Awakens?
Oh, no, I'm glad you put a spoiler warning on that, but I can't tell you anything about Force Awakens, either positively or negatively or any other way. And
you sure? Honestly, Luke doesn't come back?
Honestly, you wouldn't want me to tell you. You really wouldn't. Let's discuss all that in late December. We'll have more fun that way.
Darn, I thought I would have snuck that in, and you'd be like, oh yeah, well yeah, totally. I'm totally excited about that bit.
No, okay. Nice try.
All right, cool. So, any future projects you got going on right now, personal or Star Wars related, going in the future?
Yeah, a bunch of them. Which is, as a freelance independent writer, that better be your answer when anyone asks, or else you're in trouble. For Star Wars, I have on October 6th the 4th Servants of the Empire book, The Secret Academy, comes out. Which wraps up that quartet of young adult novels. So that's really exciting to me. We get to find out a resolution of this story of Zer Leonis and Mary Spanjeff and friends. The same day, I have a short story called The Levers of Power, starring Ray Sloan, that is in the Rise of the Empire.
She is getting a lot of play right now.
Yeah, well, she's a great character.
Awesome. That is really good.
She's a great character. Huge points to John Jackson Miller, working with Lucasfilm and Disney, of course. But I mean, huge points to JJM for creating a really compelling character that people have really taken to, and that I really enjoyed writing. So those two are coming out, and I'm doing edits now for the third book in my own series, The Jupiter Pirates. The third book is called The Rise of Earth. It'll be out, if I can get the edits done, it'll be out next June. The first two books, Hunt for the Hydra and Curse of the Iris, are out already, and we'll have a short story in that series in December to tide people over. But folks who haven't read Jupiter Pirates, it's about a family of space pirates who contend against the warships of Earth in the 29th century. And the mother is the captain. The children are midshipmen on the quarterdeck of the family pirate ship. And the thing that makes the series work is that the captaincy is handed down from one generation to the other. But as you might imagine, there can only be one captain. So the children are simultaneously cooperating as the crew of a pirate ship, but they're also competing to be the next captain. It's not Star Wars, but as you might imagine, it has a whole lot of Star Wars DNA. So if you've liked Weapon of the Jedi or my other Star Wars work, check out the Jupiter Pirates. I can pretty much guarantee that you'll like it.
I mean, yeah, it sounds very much in that same vein, so it should segue very well. Great job on the novel. Really, really enjoyed it. As you saw on Twitter, like I had a rave about it the second I finished the book.
Well, I'm so glad you liked it, and thanks for having me on. I'd be happy to let's do this again anytime. Maybe when you can ask me your Force Awakens related questions, and I can actually answer.
I'll do a follow up.
Yeah.
Hey,
absolutely.
so that time, what was it? What were the clues that were in the book?
Right.
Yeah, we're all waiting for that. It's so we're like a season away from it. We're just one autumn season away from seeing another movie that is continuing. That's actually continuing the story. I think that's why this one's so special, is because it's continuing the story versus what we had before, which is the prequels. Well, we kind of knew what was going to happen, and this one is it's open. It's a new frontier, to quote Star Trek. But
yeah, it's fun, isn't it? What do you do? What are you doing? Do you have plans for it?
Yes, I'm going to the Man Chinese Theater, just like it happened, back in '77. I'm going to be dressing up as a Jedi Guardian, and yes, we're gonna go to the first showing that is available.
You are doing it right. My hat is tipped. That's fantastic. At the Man Theater, really?
Yeah, they still got it. They changed it a little bit now, and they actually have an IMAX theater. They gutted it, the theater, and they put an IMAX in there. So that's how we're gonna do it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm also a Star Wars fan myself. The way I usually express my fandom is through lightsaber videos. Like I do lightsaber choreography and things like that, and these other videos that I do now, reviews, and now I do interviews with authors, which is pretty cool. So I got to talk to John Jackson Miller and Christy Golden. That was really cool. But yeah, it's been a good experience. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan, and I'm glad that we can all celebrate it together and have people like you and me, just hashing it out.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, gosh, it's such an exciting time with just for storytelling, whether you're creating it or consuming it, or in my case, both. And that applies not just to The Force Awakens, but Rebels and everything going on in the classic trilogy and now the new era. Yeah, it's just super fun. So yeah, who knows? So much more to come too.
Yeah, so much. We're at the beginning of it. All right, cool.
That's right.
Thank you everybody for listening in. Of course, this is Jason Fry. He just wrote the novel, The Weapon of a Jedi. Please go out and read it. It's such a great joy, especially if you're into Luke Skywalker. And thank you, Jason, for coming out and speaking to us.
Oh, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
And of course, peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always. What I've seen in a lot of debates is that people, including myself, either lowball Mace or lowball Sidious to achieve their point. Throw a grenade at him. Alright, now critical strike. Oh, I killed him. Oh no, I didn't mean to throw two. Oh, that's such a waste. Such a waste. And that's how I end my show.
Awesome. Cool. Great questions.
Thank you very much, man. That was awesome. I love talking to you guys to get like the inside scoop on what's going on with Star Wars and just your mindsets about how you interact with the characters.